There have been clashes between police and protesters in Tehran as thousands of Iranians gathered to demonstrate over the collapse of the country's currency. The rial has lost 40% of its value against the dollar in the last week. Iran's president has blamed Western sanctions for the fall, saying they amount to economic war. Well, our international editor, Lindsay Hilson, is with me now. Are these protests really about the currency or something bigger?
The currency is an enormous thing. This was really like, you could say it was Iran's Black Wednesday. With the currency falling so much, people's savings are eroded. They're desperately trying to put their money into hard currency or into gold, and that's one of the reasons it's collapsing. So we saw thousands of people out on the streets of Tehran today. We haven't seen crowds like this since 2009, when people were protesting about the disputed election. And one of the things that was interesting was that amongst the slogans that they were chanting was, why is the government spending so much money propping up the regime of Bashar al-Assad in Syria while we are suffering here when we have no money?
Well, is Ahmadinejad right? Are sanctions working?
Well, it depends what you mean by working. This is certainly partly because of sanctions. Iran gets about 80% of its foreign currency from oil sales. There's now oil sanctions, and so that's gone down by about 30%. And also, there's sanctions on the banks. Is it stopping the nuclear program? No. How it started today, these demonstrations, was in the bazaar. That's in central Tehran, all the shops and so on. And the bazaris who work there, they're an incredibly important and influential group of people. It was when they turned against the Shah in 1979, that was one of the things that ushered in the Islamic Revolution. So it is partly because of sanctions that you've got this, but it's also partly because of internal problems. And all the while, the nuclear program is continuing.
So how much of a threat is there to the regime?
I don't think there's a threat to the regime as such, but what we're seeing is an increase in factionalism within the regime. Yesterday, President Ahmadinejad got up and he said this is all because of the foreigners and what he called an invisible mafia. And then one of his big enemies within the government said it was because of him. It was the president's incompetence and his mismanagement of the economy. And meanwhile, for Iranian people, it's very difficult to know what's going on. Until today, there was almost no acknowledgement that there was a problem at all. In fact, Iranian television was talking about the problems in the Eurozone.